Hello and welcome. Today we want to solve the Cambridge International AS and A-Level Information Technology Paper 2 practical for May-June 2025. We are going to focus on the spreadsheet question. So we are going to scroll to page 2. We have been supplied with the following source files: J2, 5 clownfish, j25data.csv, j25divers.mp4, j25teacher.csv, right? So the files that we are having here, we have mp4 file and the comma separated values. Okay, you must use the most efficient method to solve each task. Underline most efficient method. So whichever methods that we are going to be using, we have to weigh and see if they are the most efficient way of solving a task. All work produced must be professional standard and suit business context. Page 3. You work for Tawara Scuba School, will run classes 7 days a week. Each classroom has a letter on the door rather than a number. Each teacher can teach up to 4 classes per day. You will create a spreadsheet to find classes for a selected teacher on a selected day. All dates must be displayed in DDMMYY format, right? Open and examine the file teacher.csv using spreadsheet application. So we will go to our source files. So in our source files, we then have to locate, these are the source files, and we locate the folder J25 teacher, and then we open our J25 teacher. So when we open a file to examine, we are supposed to see everything that's in there. That's being able to examine. So when we have information like this, where you can see teacher C, and it's supposed to be teacher code in full, and maybe there are also other information that you're not seeing clearly, you have to go to this triangle. We click there, we go between any two letters to double click so that everything that is in this Excel sheet can open up clearly, and we scroll down. So we are scrolling down so we can see all the data that we have. So what we can see right now is we have this name and the teacher code. So this is the teacher table, the teacher worksheet. So this is the name of the teacher and this is the teacher code. So that's examining, getting to know your data that you have been given. Then we go on to the next question. Open and examine data, j25.csv, place its contents in a new worksheet called data within the same workbook. Okay, so we are going to go to our source files again, and we have data. We open our data. When we open our data, we say we click that triangle, we go between A and B to examine, so we can see this is the data that we have. We can see that there's some sort of a table there, and there's another sort of a table for subjects, and another one for lessons with period and time, subject code and subject. And these are the days that we have and the class codes that we are seeing. So this is the table. So we have been asked to copy this. Control M. So Control C to copy, and we want to go and place it in a new worksheet. So we go on sheet 1 and we paste, right? This is what we are pasting from the data, okay? And then we go back to our question paper. So we are supposed to make sure that name this worksheet teacher, and here we are supposed to place its content in a worksheet called data. So the first worksheet should be teacher and the second one should be data. So we are going back to this one. We should rename this to teacher. And sheet number 2, where we placed our data, we should rename this to data. Okay. And then this worksheet contains data about classes, subjects, and lessons. We've seen that, right? The data for the subjects, periods, and room letters are stored in a string classes section. This is the format, right? It is formatted like this. Class 1, we start with the subject code. In that same class 1, the period code, And then class 1 again, the room. So we have 3 information for 1 class. So when you're done with first class, the second class that the teacher is going to have, this is the information for the second class. And this is the subject code, followed by the period, followed by the room. So when we are going to have a third class after, we will start also class 3 subject code, period, classroom, because we've been told that the teacher is teaching about 4 classes. Okay, so the length of the string will depend on the number of classes taught by each teacher on each day. For example, the teacher only teaches 2 classes on this day. So this one, we can see that the teacher only has 2 classes because we have only 2 sets, right? So class 1, class 2, but we can go to class 4. Create a new worksheet called workbook. Create a new worksheet within the workbook called Finder. In this worksheet, create a table with merged fields to be formatted like this. Okay, so this is a bonus 6 marks, I would say, because you're just copying what's there in a new worksheet, and then you format it in this way so that you get the 4 marks, the 6 marks. Save your workbook as Finder followed by center number, candidate number. For example, find out that we are now saving the workbook, right? So we are now saving the workbook. We are supposed to save it in the format of a workbook, not a CSV. So we are now going to our teacher again, and this one is a new sheet. We call it Finder. So I had already had the formatting done so that we can move faster. So this is our Finder, right? And this is what you're supposed to do: highlight, merge, class, type that, make sure it's left aligned, it's right aligned, center aligned, that name of the class is at the center, and then you have your subject. So this is how you're supposed to format. And then we are going to save this now, right? So when you're saving this, we are going to save it in the format of the workbook. Okay, so file, save this as Excel workbook, and on the desktop, and this one is a June paper, so we are going to save it in there, right? So we have saved our file as an Excel workbook, right? So now we are going to go to our question paper again to continue. So question 2, place in cell B3 the date 13 March 2025. Format this date as that. So let's go and do that. So in the date, we're going to say 13/03/2025, right? And we want to format this data, so we format it in that format. We're going to say right click, you go to format, then you go to date, right? And you select the format that you want. But if you don't see the format that you want, right, from the formats that are given, for example, would want to use this type of format, right? If you don't see it, you can go to custom, right? And when you go to custom, you then type in, and usually the problem is when you look at this one, right, you would want the one with spaces only, right, without the slash. So sometimes you can see that you won't find the option that you want from the question paper, the question paper would have given you a certain format, and from the list that are given there, you can't find it. You just go to custom, and then you type in as the person paper has given you, like that, space, and you put your 4 Ys like that, and you click on OK. right? So you formatted so that if you type in data in this format, it will show in this format, because this is what the question paper wants to see, right? Now from there, we now go to the next question, right? Restrict data entry for this cell. Restrict data entry for this cell so that only dates from 2025 to 2026 can be entered. If the date is not accepted, display an appropriate error message, right? So we are saying we want to put in data. In this one, we want to do a validation. Right click validation, and we want to validate date between 1 January 2025 and 31 January 2026. So this is what we type in on our validation. The validation, you select date from this list, you selecting date, and then you are saying it has to be between this date, 1 January 2025 and 31 December 2026. Okay, and then on the error message, you can then write the error message that you want. Enter date between 2025 and 2026. Right. So this is the error message that you then give in the event that the person writes in the wrong one. So if you go in there, right, and you try to enter a date that is 2029, it will give you an error. Enter date between 2025 2026. Okay, so you can only cancel and enter a date that is between those one. Right, let's go to the next question. Set cell B4 so that the name of the teacher can be entered from a drop-down list. The teacher worksheet can be edited if required, right? So now we want to select a teacher. So we are going to go there and do a validation again. And we go to validation settings from a list. Then we go to our teacher on our source. There we want to go to the teacher and say the information we want to select is that. Click on OK. So when you click, you can now click the teacher that you want to use. Okay, let's go to the next one. The next question is saying, place in cell B6 a formula to look up the code for this teacher. Okay, so we are now going to our Excel. We want to look up the code for this teacher. This is the teacher that we have selected. What is the code for this teacher? So information, I go to my teacher worksheet, and I can see that these are the teachers, these are the teacher code. So because I'm going to first look for the teacher to find the output that I want, which is teacher code, and teacher code is behind the teacher name. I cannot use Vlookup despite that the data is vertically aligned going down, right? If only teacher code was in front, then I could use Vlookup. So in this instance, I've seen my table array. Yes, this is the information going down, but Vlookup won't work, so I'll use Xlookup. So what will I say now? I'll have to go to my finder and say equals Xlookup. Lookup value is this teacher. I want to look for this teacher. Where do I find this teacher? Lookup array is where I find the teacher. So I will find the teacher where in this list, comma. Okay, it's a comma, not a full stop, comma. Then return array. Return array is the column where I find the teacher code. That's the simplest function I would think everyone should just understand, the Xlookup. Lookup value, where I find this lookup value, this value that is in B4, where is the array where I find it? It's usually one row or one column. So B2 to B9, this is one column, column B. So it's starting from 2 to 29. And my return is also one column, A2 to 8:29. Then after that, you can end there, or you can say, if it's not found, what do you want me to do? So you can say, if it's not found, if it doesn't find it, please just write nothing, right? It's one thing to also put, it depends with your question. And what type of match do you want? We always want an exact match. And then I close my bracket and then I enter. Then it will give me the code. Okay. Then day code, right? Day code for that one. So let's go to our question 5. Place in cell B7 a function to return the day code for the date entered in cell B3. For example, Sunday is 1, Monday is 2, right? So on this question, we are now going to say, okay, this is 13 March. What is the day code? We know that with day codes, we know Sunday is 1, Monday is 2, and they've given us an example. So the function that we use to get that information is the weekday. That's the one that we start with an equal sign. Equals weekday, right? Weekday of what? Of this. What is the weekday of this date, right? Comma. And then you put the return type. Return type is usually 1. However, it will depend with the question in the event that they tell you otherwise, or some information that has to contradict with the normal one that we know that Sunday is 1. So if you want Monday to be 1 and Sunday to be 7, if you want Monday to be 0, so you have to select 1 for the normal one that we know, or you select on 2 if you want Monday to be 1, and you select on 3 if you want Monday to be 0 and Sunday to be 6. So always, or most of the time, we are going to be just putting 1, and then it will give us to say this date is day number 5. Then we go to the next question. Place in cell B8 a function to return the day of the week for the date entered in cell B3, right? So we want to write a function that will return the day of the week. Is it a Monday? Is it a Tuesday? Is it a Wednesday? Okay, so the function that we use there is text. So we are going to say equals text, right? Text for this day, what is it? Right, you put in the format for the day. We know we will put in this, right? We start by putting quotes, and you put in your 4 Ds because we want the day in full to be Thursday, and then you close the bracket. Then we go to the next question. Place in cell B9 index and match functions to display the string for the teacher for these teacher lessons using the teacher code and day of the week, right? So we are using teacher code and day of the week, right? So we go to our here, and we have been told we are using index and match. So we start by saying index, we select the array. So our array is starting from B4 to H31. That's my array. So the main trick here is don't move to the next sheet without putting a comma, right? We have your data there. Put the comma first before you go to the next sheet because it can affect you. Okay. Then you put in match. Match what? Then you go to your finder to say, right, I want to use why am I selecting teacher code in my row? It's because when I'm in data, this is the teacher codes. They are in the rows. They are in the rows going down. So the teacher code is what I start with because that's what I have in the rows. So if I open my information like this, these are the rows going down. These are the rows, okay? So I start with this information going down. The rows for it to be easy for you, just check the side that is numbers. You know your Excel is letters and numbers. Whatever is in the numbers part, that's what you use as your rows. So you go to your finder and then say, okay, this is going to be my lookup value, comma, before I move into data. And then when I'm now in data, it can tell you now, calling data. And then this is the array where I find the teacher code, comma, exact match, close bracket, comma, I'm done with my column. With my row, I move into the column. I put in another match. So match what? Lookup value. Then I want to say I'm using the day of the week, comma. Where do I find the day of the week? I go to my data and this is the day, comma, 0, close bracket. So now I have my information. Then I close my bracket for the index match. So this will be my data, right? So for you to know if I've done correctly, you go and check Thursday with DRH in your data. So you're going to say DRH, this is my DRH according to where it meets with Thursday, it should give me this in output. So is it what I got? So that's how you test to see if you got your answer correct. S1FS2EA, right? Let's check S1F2EA, that. So that's correct. Okay, so we move on to the next question. So the next question is now question number 8. It's saying, place in cell B13 to E13 a formula to display the name of the subject for each class. Okay, so when I go to my data, for me to know which information am I using, I'm going to look at this table, and on this table I can see it's vertically aligned, and this is the code, this is the subject, this is the code, this is the subject. So this is the table that is the subject that I want. So I'm going to use information from my string that I've created using index and match to use this. So I'm taking the string and then outputting the data out. Okay, so because this is going down, I'm saying, okay, this table is actually vertical aligned. So the function that I'm going to use to find this subject code is a different function. And then when I get my code, I'm going to use a Vlookup to get the subject. Okay, so I'm now going to my finder, and I'm going to say equals Vlookup, right? Now, what is my lookup value? My lookup value is the first letter there, because this is representing my class code. I can see that from my question paper, because the question paper actually illustrated this at the start, where I have the subject code, period, and classroom. So subject code to get the subject. So I want this code and this code on this 4th position, and the other one that is going to come on the 7th position. Okay, so I am going to use, because the information I'm going to be extracting is inside, I'm going to use my mid function. So mid of what? Mid of this cell. And at the first, I want to get the first character, which is 1 character. And the first character and number of characters is 1. So this is my lookup value. Then my table array, I go to my data, I highlight this table to say, now that lookup value, find it in this table. And column number is 2, exact match. Then I close my bracket. Okay, so this is the name of the subject for this S. So I can check to say the subject S is safe asset. So it picked on correctly. Now I'm going to need to auto-fill this. So I have to make sure what needs to be logged is logged. Whenever you use your VLOOKUP just know that the array has to be logged, okay? So whenever you use your VLOOKUP, you log the array. So, and when we check on this question again, we can see that the string should also be logged. We don't want it to be moved, okay? The string has to be logged. We don't want it to be moved. So we are going to have it like that, right? So this is after logging, and then we autofill. Because we're having the same answer, we have to adjust now on the number that we are picking using the mid function. So from this one, it's still picking first one. So we are just going to adjust to say, at this point, I want you to pick the fourth character in from my the fourth position from this, right? So in our B, instead of us having the first character, which is S, this first F, I want you to pick the fourth character. 1, 2, 3. Class 1 is done. We start again 1. We are now on position 4. So we are having that. Then after that, we are going to say this is the next information, then the room type, then we come back again. So we'll be now on position 7. So if this is 4, 5, 6, 7. So on class number 3, we need to put in 7. Instead of 1, we are putting 7. 8, 9, and then the last one we put in 10. Okay, so this is the information for this. So whenever you change the information here, it's going to affect that. So if we have only 2 classes, you can see that this one is not going to give you data because only 2 classes are being given there. So let's go to the next question. So we are now on question 9. Place in B14 to E14 a formula to display the time of each class. Okay, so when we go to our table, this is the area where we have our time. So when we look at this data, we have the period, and then we get the time. The period, we get the time. The period, we get them. So we can see that this is also a VLOOKUP function that we are supposed to use, because we can see the data is vertically aligned, and the data that we want to retrieve is actually on the front side. It's actually on the right side. Okay, so we are going to write another VLOOKUP function again for this question. Right, so on our finder, we are going to say equals VLOOKUP, and then we want the lookup value. Our lookup value is the mid again, right? Mid of what? Mid of this same function position. What position do we want to get, right? So the position is guided again from this, the period here, right? So the period is 1 for this one, period is 2 for the other. So we are starting at position 2. So we are writing a 2, comma, how many characters? 1, we close bracket, and then we then put in our, after the comma, we put in the table array. So I go into my data and highlight my table array. This is the table array, comma, 2, because my information is going to come on 2, comma, exact match. I close my bracket, right? And I remember that whenever I use a VLOOKUP on the array, I have to make sure I lock it, because I don't want this array to ever move, right? And this string, I don't want it to move as well. So I'm going to lock it, right? And the other thing, this, when you use a mid function, whatever it extracts, these are numbers, right? But it will see them as text. So what we would want to do, for example, if we put in enter here, you can see that it's getting a 1, which is text. So when it now finds it in there, it will not be able to do it. So you have to wrap this inside the function called value. So whenever you want to retain the numeric part of a number, you wrap it inside a value, right? So when you wrap it inside value, now you can see that it's now giving you the information. So on period 2, it's what is the time? 11 to 12:30. Let's test that. Period 2 is 11 to 12:30. So we can see that our function is working. Okay. So what we are going to do is just replicate. And when we replicate, we then remember that the mid function has to change as well, right? So now it's now changing. We are now using the positions instead of the second position. Now it's going to be moving to be the 5th position. And on this one, instead of second, when we are now on class 3, it's going to move to 8th position. On this one, it's now going to move to 11th position. Right. So these two are not giving us because we only have data that has 2 there. But if we test with something that has, this one is 3. Let's look for something that is all information. Yes. So this one has all, so we can see the information coming. So let's move to the next question. Edit a formula. We are now on question 10, right? We are now on question 10. Place in cell B15 a formula to display the room for each class. Okay, so this one is just displaying the room for each class, and we know the room is the last digit. Okay, so we are just going to use mid equals mid of what? Mid of this, comma, right? It's position number 3. Okay, so we're going to put in comma 3, comma 1. We want just that one character. So it will display as the room. So which is our E there. And we would want to now pick if we picked that on 1 to the D. So when we replicate, we have to first look, because we don't want this part to move. So we're going to say $there, $there. And we replicate. After replicating, we just going to change now it's no longer on class number 2, it will no longer be 3, right? We will now use 6 position, 6. And on this one, so that it gives us that D1, 2, 3, D1, 2, we need that other D, which is position 9. Position 9. And on the last one, it's going to be position 12. Position 12. Enter. Okay. So that's it. And then we go to the next one. Edit the formula in cells B13 to B15 so that there is no data. So that if there is no data for this class, it does not display an error. Okay, so the errors that we have been seeing there. So we just want to wrap with if error, right? So we are saying if there's an error in this function, you put a comma and you put quotes there, right? Enter. So that's what we are just doing to our functions. We are just wrapping in if error. If there's an error, comma, bring in nothing. So that's all we are doing for all our functions. There's an error, comma, display nothing. That's how the if error works. And for just doing that, you are just getting your 4 marks for doing if error for all your functions that you wrote. Okay. So if error in this function, you put a comma after and then your quotes. Okay. So we are doing this for all these, the same thing. Okay. So let's go to the next one. Replace the labels in cell B12 to E12 with formula to display labels class 1 to class 4 only if there is data for that class. If there is no data, the label should not be visible. Okay, so we are saying in the event that there is no data in this cell, right? We don't want this to show. If there is no data in this cell, we don't want this to show. So we are just going in there and we are writing an if function equals if this cell, right? If this cell is equal to nothing, comma, display what? Nothing. Otherwise, display class 1. Right. Okay. So let's look at our function. So we're writing equals. This is actually text. So whatever text that we want displayed as it is, we would also want it to be written in quotes. Okay. So we see that if we are not going to have any data there, we will not have class 1. So we had forgotten to put the quotes for that one. So we are going to just replicate that. Right. So, and then we just go on in there and change that it should display class 2. And then when you go in there, it should display class 3. And then when we go in there, it should display class 4. Okay, so this is the function that we're supposed to and to write for our person on this one. Okay, so let's go to the next one. Okay, create a new word. Okay, this is a test plan. So for now, we'll end here focusing on only the Excel part. Then for the test plan, we'll do it in a new video. Okay, we hope you learned something. It's bye for now. Let's keep practicing. We only get better by practicing. If you don't get it correct, don't lose hope. Try and try and try again. Okay, so it's bye for now.